Hot Springs Village Inside Out is a closer look at the greatness of Hot Springs Village, Arkansas, and the surrounding areas. People, places, experiences. Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is one of the most beautiful places on the earth. Join me, Randy Cantrell, and my co-host Dennis Simpson as we engage in weekly conversations to explore Hot Springs Village Inside Out. Today's show is brought to you by Central Arkansas's favorite radio station, KVRE. Find them on the dial at 92.9 FM. Stream them live at kvre.com.
Hey, Pat, I'm thinking about building this new neighborhood, and I want to sell it in 18 months. What do you think?
Did you tell him he was crazy?
I said, okay, tell me more.
And so it begins. Today, our guest is Miss Pat Bollier. It is such a delight to have you, Pat. We've been friends for many years. I met you at an open house well over a decade ago, probably 13 or 14 years ago. And I remember the first words you ever said to me, Pat. Is that your dog outside?
Did I? I'm sure I said that.
I know you said that. Yeah.
Well,
I was like, yeah, he just needs to go take a pee. He's fine.
Okay. Well, at least he wasn't inside.
He wasn't inside. Pat is the number 2 realtor in the village. And according to Arkansas Business, as of this morning, have you seen it?
No, sir, I have not.
You are number 32 in the state, my dear.
Wow.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
And here, all these times we spoke, and I intentionally sprung that on you right now to let you know, I think it's a wonderful accomplishment. You should be very proud. And I want to make note, there are other teams that sell a lot more, but they're teams. There are other people involved in this, right?
Yes, that is true. I am a one-man or one-woman show.
And let's make note. Let's talk about teams real quick. If you'll notice, I have the obligatory correct gear on today. I have my Razorback cap. Now, we're not in the Final Four, but I was very impressed we made it to the Elite 8. That's my theory. Mm-hmm. So, Pat, I don't even know where to begin. How did we make it to the village? And we'll get to the building Ciega here in just a minute. For those of you who know, Ciega is this showplace subdivision that Brandon Tedder and Miss Pat worked on together that, well, they worked in coordination with the POA. I don't want to give it all away, but it's a wonderful development. If you want to see what the future of the village looks like, come visit Ciega. So more than that, Pat, let me get to it. Why would you live in Hot Springs Village?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why others and I should live here. And first of all, it's just the beauty. It's the overall beauty. It's the security. It's the amenities, the affordability. I could go on. And I know just this weekend, I was having dinner with someone at the Granada Clubhouse. We were sitting outside and we were looking at what's on my background right now. And my client turned around and he looked and he pointed to the course and the whole space. And he said, this is why I want to move here. He said, I want this and I want to escape the noise. I'm tired of the noise. And I thought that said it all.
Yeah.
So there's lots and lots of reasons. And you and I've chatted. It's not for everybody, but it's certainly for an awful lot of people who choose to come here, and they choose to come here. That's the beauty of it. Most of us were not born here. People choose to come here.
Well, and I've mentioned before, the people that do want to come here, you're going to take them out with a stick of dynamite or a coffin, one of the two. Because after you get here, why would you leave? I mean, and I'll throw myself in here real quick. I'm a guy who came from that right where your picture is. I'm 20 miles west of there or east of there in Benton, Arkansas. I know the area well. I know the area around it. It's still stinking gorgeous. And as you say, incredibly affordable, incredibly, frankly, inexpensive by any standard, and very, very secure. But how did you get to the village?
Well, I grew up in Northwest Arkansas. My husband grew up in Southeast Arkansas. We met at the University of Arkansas. So we were both from the state. My parents were early adopters of owning a lot. They came down on the Cooper tour. in the 70s, and they purchased a lot, and they would come here, they'd stay, they'd go to the races. Over the years, we did family reunions here. So we were very familiar with the village, and it thought at some point in time we would retire here. When Granada Golf Course was being built, we bought a lot. When it was just being, carved out, we thought, well, okay, this is a good spot to be. We still own that lot, and we didn't build on it, but we moved here sooner than we expected. One of my father passed away, and it was a wake-up call to us that we were just too far away. We were living in New England at the time.
New England?
And in Boston.
Wow.
We were there for 25 years. Great careers. Miss it, love it. Big Patriots fan, Red Sox fan, you name it. We love the city, but we were too far away from family. So we moved here back in 2004 because of family. And so it was, ahead of our schedule, but it was the right thing to do. And I don't regret it. I love living here and love visiting Boston and that surrounding area. But the village is just, it's home. It's safe. It's a great place to be. So that's what brought us here. That meant, quite a while ago.
Well, let me interrupt. So apparently they have some kind of party in Boston once in a while. And I think they call it some kind of Irish, what is it? The what? What? Come on.
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day. And just to show that there's still some celebratory in you. That looks like Miss Pat at the shortest parade party, doesn't it?
That would be me. Yes. In my Queen for the Day costume.
So there may be some Irish in you, right?
There is. My father is Irish. So yes, there is absolutely some Irish in me.
And this is your brother, Dave?
That's my brother, David. There's 4 of us, and he was here for what we have an annual, it's called the Siblings Reunion. Since both our parents have passed away, maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, we started Siblings Reunion, and they always come to my house here in the village, and we have 4 or 5 days of golf. We go to the races, we attend the parade. My brother really attends the parade. He makes a point of, I don't want to give this away, he might get in trouble next year, but he's an unofficial entrant.
Say that again, a what?
An unofficial entrant.
So this is somebody who basically just crashes the parade and gets in line while they're doing that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, you could say that. I don't want to say that to get him in trouble, but yes,
I put too fine a point on it.
Yes, you can see his costume, which he made. It's just a great costume. It's one of the better costumes. So he certainly fits.
He made that.
He made that.
That's
he made
incredible.
that himself with no assistance. But he has a great time at it. We just enjoy it very much. It's a great chance for me to reconnect with my siblings. We didn't get to do it during COVID.
Yeah.
So we made up for it this year.
Well, Pat, people that know you and know me, we work all the time. I mean, every day, all the time. And we actually, for this weekend, I think it was Thursday, I said, let's do our monthly meeting, Pat. And you were like, nope, family's coming into town. Can't do that. No. This is an immutable. I will be with my family, and we will have a great time. And I met you. Oh, geez, I guess we were 6 or 7 years ago. We met you there.
Yes. Yeah. You saw us in our, my Cindy Woohoo costume, but we went this year. It was great. It was, I'm glad we were able to do it after having to take a hiatus for 2 years. Yeah.
If you don't see your siblings very often that way, that's very important. And it's a wonderful get together. By the way, who made your dress before we change off this?
Well, that was rented from Hot Springy Dingy. If you know that store.
As soon as you said rented, I'm like, she went to the Springy Dingy. Where else has stuff you can rent like this?
Well, I had rented a costume for, we were doing a benefit. I think it was for Habitat. and that got canceled. And I
Mhm.
had a costume rented that they had fitted, and it was a great costume, a lot easier to walk around in than this one. So when I went back to get that same costume, they couldn't find it.
Oh no.
So I said, all right, we got to find a substitution. And this one was hanging up and way up high. And I said, well, what about that one? And they said, well, that's actually the Queen's costume.
Oh wow.
And so I said, can I wear that one? And they said, sure. So they altered it a bit for me. So, but it was lots of fun to wear. It was hard to walk around in, but I certainly got a lot of attention.
I bet. Well, and let's go to the chase here. We many times we have a lot of people that are listening and watching, don't know anything about the area, and it's so hard. There's so many attractions. There are so many attractions, but if you've never walked in the Springy Dinghy, would you call it unique, Pat?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a throwback in time.
Yeah, it really, and they have hundreds of costumes, and you're like, it's a costume shop. No, they've got tons of other paraphernalia, and it's I don't think the word head shop is what they would prefer for us to use, but
but they're definitely hippies.
They're very, very, very.
And it's worth going in there just to visit with the owners because they are so colorful and so kind.
Yeah.
And I'd never gone in there, and I asked one of my friends where I could rent a costume because I couldn't seem to find what I wanted.
Yeah.
And they recommended them, and I think they're wonderful. And
they are.
Yeah, they're just a hoot.
Diane and I went to a Boomers event, which we need to promote the Boomers more here too. But we went to a Boomers event not too long ago, and she had an outfit made up like a little French maid, and she had one of those. Who has those, right? Who has those? And I had the Lord of the Manor with the long white tails and whatever, and all this brought to you by the fine folks at Springy Dinghy, because without them, yeah. Well, I digress. We've gotten off the path, and I didn't mean to, but we know why we would live in Hot Springs Village. And I know you see a lot of people, a lot of phone calls. By the way, the gentleman you were talking about that was looking at the Granada course behind you, where was he from that he wanted to lose the noise? Where was that?
Austin, Texas.
Really? Really? Well, you know, Randy, who unfortunately can't be with us today, he's not feeling well, but Randy talks about how he used to, pre-COVID, he would go out and walk between, he's an insomniac, he would go out and walk between 2 and 4 in the morning. And that's one of the few times you couldn't hear traffic noise.
Oh.
Said the rest of the time, it's like a background noise. It's a constant, and you just get to where you ignore it. And we take the silence here for granted. I'm not going to give away exactly where you live, but I will say you're on a golf course and you have a majestic view down the fairway, and you're on, I would call a mediocre to main road, and it's silent every night, isn't it?
Yes, it is. DeSoto is, just a street and a half over, and you don't hear anything after. Well, I don't hear much at all when I'm here, but when you are outside, you don't hear, a truck barreling through. You just don't hear any of that. The first year we moved here from New England, we sat outside on our deck every night until 10 o'clock at night. When we'd come in and watch the news, we just couldn't believe that we could see the stars and it be so quiet. Just breathtaking.
And if you haven't seen the stars, I mean, 15 from your house, 23 miles away in Hot Springs, you see a little orange glow over there on the horizon. But when you look up, it is opaque black with stunning stars. And anyway, I digress. We've covered that. Tell me this, who is the average buyer? Is there such a thing as an average buyer these days?
No, it's they're from all over. I was reflecting today, knowing we were going to be meeting and thinking about how has it changed over the 16 years that I've been doing this. And I would say that we have a younger crowd than we did when I first started. I can't compare it to back in the 70s when Cooper started, because I don't go that far back. But I had during COVID, and that's still, some of the carryover of it. I had younger families moving here who they didn't want their children in their school system anymore. I had couples that decided to move here sooner than retirement, because they could commute they could work from anywhere as long as I had good internet speeds for them. And I think you know that I spent my career with Verizon.
Mhm.
So I have a good background in internet speeds. So I was able to, before anybody buys a home, that's one of the first things that I check is to make sure that the internet is up to par for what their needs are. But we had people moving in that just sooner than they thought. I have Colorado people coming here. I'm seeing some California buyers, not to the extent that some others are. Probably 67% of my business is listings, and the balance is buyers. And that includes both, new construction lots, resale homes, but seeing some investors come in, repositioning themselves from Texas. Arkansas is rated very high for investors to come into. And so, yes, there's been a change, but still getting the Michigan crowd. I'm seeing more West Coast people, I guess is the best way of saying it. Texas is still number one. It has been since I started in the business, that Texas is just the natural draw where they are to us.
Well, let me go back just for a minute. We started out the show with the quote from Brandon, or your rendition of it. And, the years that you and I have worked together and known these things, for the average listener and viewer, I bet you and I have looked at 20 properties. Am I mistaken?
At least
in that ballpark,
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things y'all need to know about Pat, and I'll just the cat out of the bag of some sort. I've never had you sugarcoat your feelings.
No, I'm pretty direct.
She's pretty. Pat goes, that's an awfully steep driveway, Dennis, or that's a whatever. And but the beauty of it, Pat, and over the years, Lord knows, I finally learned enough that I can, come back or have an objective viewpoint. But it gets to the point where, how do I say it? I'll tell you what, let me just back up completely.
Okay.
In the 10 years before 2020, before the pandemic, it would be fair to say that the prices were depressed here. Would that be a fair comment?
Oh, absolutely. We had way too much supply, and we didn't have the demand. I mean, I'll back up a little bit. When I started in 2006, I was the 157th realtor that came into the village, and there were 153 listings. And that number, the market was slowing. We were slow to react in the village, to the rest of the country, because we're just who we are.
Right.
Our inventory grew from 153 homes up to 512.
And the average days on market corresponding?
We had 10 and a half months of inventory.
10 and a half months.
Right. And now we have a half a month.
Really?
So a balanced market is 4 to 6 months. But this is a national issue. We have 30 homes on the market as of today. And I think 5 or 6 townhomes. And that's it. And we sell across the village in the MLS, we sell, close to 60 homes a month. So a half a month.
So a 2-week supply.
A 2-week supply.
Holy
Very different
cow.
than 10 years ago. So, how you approach your business changes, because it was a buyer's market 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so you have clients coming in with their list of 40 and 50 homes that they wanted to see, and they wanted to beat up sellers in pricing. It's just the way it was.
And they did. They did.
And they did. And they did.
And, actually, you and I were looking at a property just on the other side of the lake in February or January of 2020. And I remember looking at the property and thinking, this is nice, but I'm just not going to pay that much. And I was spoiled simply because we had gotten some fantastic bargain in retrospect.
Right.
And with today's prices, we wouldn't be able to do what we did at that time. But around that same time, apparently, I'm guessing 2019 or so, Mr. Brandon Tedder with Renaissance Homes came and knocked on your door, and how did this even start? Because I'm trying to set the background for the fact it was a dry, depressed market. And you and Brandon came in and said, okay, let's do a whole subdivision.
Well, Brandon, first of all, Brandon and I have worked together for about 14 years. Great builder, wonderful reputation. His whole team is stellar. And so we'd worked together for a long time. I represented, when he would build what we call a spec home, I would represent that. I had a number of build jobs. And he came to me with this idea of going into this neighborhood, a portion of Ciega. And we hadn't named it yet at that time. We weren't sure what we were going to call it.
Well, it was the Ciega subdivision.
Right. But we weren't sure, we came up, and I think I chatted with you about it. So we had to come home to Ciega.
Mm-hmm.
The concept was, and it was gathered from information, that clients were telling me what they were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a sense of a community, a sense of a neighborhood, a sense of, first of all, knowing your neighbors, having like homes, but not looking cookie cutter.
Yeah, but walkability too.
Absolutely, walkability, but a sense of community. And so he had been working with Stephanie at the POA, and they had a number of lots that they had taken, that they were able to acquire for whatever reason. And there were other lots there because we wanted to get all the lots in that street, and that, the two streets that are there.
And why was that important? And I'm asking primarily for people from the outside.
Well,
what's the deal?
Well, we didn't want, we wanted more opportunity. We wanted a neighborhood. We didn't want to have a bunch of empty lots. We were able to secure all but 4.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 4 empty lots in there that are owned by others, but we really wanted the whole neighborhood.
But that allowed you to set the theme. I mean,
yes,
I wouldn't call it farmhouse, but it's kind of whitewashed with some cedar, and
it's a rustic
I really like the
look.
look. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. It's a rustic look.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything's brick in there. And so we were able to create this neighborhood atmosphere, and it was a huge success. I was nervous.
Can I remind you of a quote you gave me?
What was that?
I hope this works because I got all my chips on it.
I mean, I did a lot of marketing. I had a billboard dedicated to it. We did a number of magazine layouts, and I thought, wow, okay, all right. But I got to tell you, it was a blast.
But this was all pre-COVID. I mean, we can look at the market today and go, wow, it was going to sell. When you started, it was not a sure thing at all.
No, it was not a sure thing. I mean, it was scary because thinking, all right, I've got 20 plus homes in here that we're going to try to sell in 2 years. And I'm thinking, there are spec houses that sit on the market at that time. They could sit for 3 or 4 months. And I'm like, okay, all right, how do we do this? But we worked really hard on it. Of course, when we went into it, we didn't know that the pandemic would actually be a driver for people coming here. I mean, that was a game changer. People want to be in open spaces, but it fit a need of people who wanted to age in place, who wanted one level, we have singles in there, we have couples in there, from all walks of life. But they pretty much all wanted the same thing. And it's a wonderful, wonderful neighborhood. We need to do more of these. It was a huge success. People are still driving through there wanting to know where they can sign up. I still get phone calls.
I bet.
So there's other neighborhoods that are coming, but that one, that went so well. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But I thank all the people who purchased in there, and I thank the whole Renaissance team. I thank the POA for doing what they did to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, let me interject. And I am not a realtor. I don't know if I'll ever be a realtor, and I know you are, and I know that's what you do, and you've done it for coming on 1.5 to 2 decades by now. But there are things I can say that you can't say. And I don't mean that derogatorily. There's just things that regulatorily would get you in trouble.
Absolutely.
And let me tell the listeners and watchers of the program, the village was built from west to east. And in 1970, they started on the far west end and built a lot of homes on that end. And as they went through, they got to about the midway mark, which is right where Balboa Road delineates. And everything from 1990 on is from Balboa Road to the east. So there's a delineation from west to east. And in the east, which is very close to Benton, and there a lot of people commute from there. And so there's a different draw. If you're on the west end, it's tempting to go to Hot Springs. That's the easy way to go. If you're on the east end, it's tempting to go to Benton. And there's been a lot of new homes, a lot of newer homes on the east end. A lot of realtors push and sell homes on the east end, which is fair enough. Ciega's kind of right in the middle.
Yes.
It's not west and it's not east. So for those of us that are kind of in the know, and like I say, I'm saying things that I think we would all agree on, but you couldn't necessarily say, but right in the middle, that was even riskier because those were, I mean, let's face it, they were vacant lots. The reasons the POA had some of them is because they'd been turned back in. People are like, well, you know, our grandparents died. We don't want it anymore. Our parents died. We don't want it anymore. The beauty of that spot was, and those that wouldn't know, the DeSoto Trail that goes roughly from one end of the village to the other goes right by that entire subdivision.
It encircles it, the Hernando Trail right there.
And
Yes.
it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, pristine. You think you're in a national park. And I'm trying to set up the image for the listeners and viewers. And what did the POA do? If I'm not mistaken, they actually expanded the trail to where it more
Yes.
accompanied the
Yes.
Ciega.
Yes. And I'm sorry I didn't send you that picture, but if you look at the Ciega subdivision, and all of my marketing material had that, we have the Hernando Trail circling Ciega. So, you know, people can easily jump on that trail from behind their houses that live there, and they can walk on down to the woodlands if they want to and continue, you know, further. But yes, that was an amenity that you know, it was there, and they just enhanced it, and it brought value to an area that had no, I don't want to say had no value, but it had little value.
Let me put it in perspective for you. I can do it because I'm not a realtor. Those properties were going between $500 and $1,000 a piece. The POA sold them over to Mr. Brandon in a block with a lot of other properties, and those, an empty property right there would go for 25 these days, I'm guessing.
It would, yes, in that area, in that particular subdivision, those four that we do not have, their value has gone up significantly.
Yeah,
significantly.
Yeah. Well, and I have to explain this again to the listeners and watchers. The village, 32,284 or properties, 32,000 plus, have all been sold. Cooper sold them all into individual people's names. They didn't sell them to developers that kept 1,000 aside here or kept aside a couple of subdivisions. So we, after Cooper has left or not actively developing anymore, if we want to try and put together 3 lots, 4 lots, 5 lots, that's a lot of builders, and that's a lot of sellers. And you're trying to glue all that piece together. It's harder and harder to get contiguous pieces of property to do this with, right?
Oh, it is. I just went through it with a client, and it was a probably 4 or 5 month project where I put together 3 different owners. We closed actually today.
Oh, really?
And it's just north of Ciega. That whole area, you know, it's just a hidden gem. I don't think people realized the potential.
If you've never been down Razzo or Claro or back up, I mean, I think and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but what I wanted to, on the north side of DeSoto, where Ciega is, literally back behind that is a beautiful ridge that has views into Hot Springs. Just over that ridge is Durante, which overlooks Lake Lago.
Yes.
And there's other views out to the east from it. I mean, the whole area is just, it's its own city center that had never had a real development put into it. Is that fair enough?
And that's absolutely true. And now there's focus. I mean, as I said, just north of Ciega, we put these 3 lots together off of Via Hero, and the client, I mean, it's beautiful. And I personally, even though I drive these roads 7 days a week, 16 years, I just hadn't paid much attention to that area because there's so many other areas. And I went, wow. So there's a focus on that. And hopefully we'll have focus on a lot of other areas because there's so much demand for people to move here. Our building permits are up from where they were. We're still not at the records when Cooper was here in, 2005 and 6, but we did, I think, 140 or so last year.
Right.
And we're on track. We just don't have enough builders. We'd even have more permits, but we're on track for that this year.
How many more do you think we could sell if we had more builders? How many more would be on the ground? And by the way, this is the last week of March. Last week, I went to lunch with Charlie Brown, and he had noted that they had 30 permits for this year so far. So it's on and off track. You could say it's off track because it's slower than what we wanted, but there just aren't the builders around it.
There aren't the workers. There's not the workers.
Or the subs to cover it. Yeah.
It's hard to say how much more we can do. I will share this with you as far as trends. I've had a number of clients that have wanted to move here, but we didn't have the inventory, and we didn't have we didn't have the inventory, and sometimes people just can't wait 10 months for a home to be built.
Sure.
So as much as they wanted to be here, they were purchasing properties outside of the village. So it's hard. I know we could take on so much more. We have a lot of people that are renting while they search. And so we've got that whole thing going, the dynamics of that going on. The individual I was with on Wednesday, this weekend, from Austin, he's rented for 3 months, and we're pretty much looking every day if something comes on the market so he can be here to make a decision.
Well, I know you don't have a crystal ball, or I don't think you do, but if you did have a crystal ball, what would you say is going to happen? I mean, are interest rates going to just put a tamper on things? Is it going to slow down? I mean, what?
Well, I mean, interest rates are up clearly, and you're right. I don't have a crystal ball. It will have some impact upon some buyers. I see this year being pretty similar to 2021. Really? If people like inflation, they're just having to swallow the fact that things are costing more. Because we don't know where they're going, and there's still some frenzy in the market to try to get something locked in before things get even higher as far as interest rates.
And this is a nosy question that I don't know if I'm asking a realtor question or not, but security. I've had so many people tell me, I actually taught a course last Tuesday, the cord cutting course. And, I'll tell you a cute story. We were showing demos of how to watch or listen to Hot Springs Village Inside Out. And I told one of the presenters, I said, just hold the button and say, okay, Google, play Hot Springs Village Inside Out. And it came up, and there was this little 78, 80-year-old lady on the front row, and she was just as cute as she could be. And she turned to me and she said, "Is that you?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me." And she said, "Oh, you're much cuter in person." I said, "And you are too, sweetheart. You are too." She really was adorable. And hang on one second. Okay, Google, stop. Yeah, because you can't do that. Yeah, anyway. So I walk outside, we start walking down the trail, and a couple come across the bridge. And the lady says, "I know you." And I said, "Well, I'm Dennis." And she said, "You're on that show." And I said, "Yeah, on Hot Springs Inside Out, Village Inside Out." And she said, "We're here from New Mexico. And we just recently bought here about 3 months ago, and we've watched all your shows." And I said, "All of our shows? Are you sure?" Because I mean, that's, jokingly. And she said, "No, I don't know that we would have moved here without you." And I said, I'm not patting myself on the back here. I said, "Well, what was the deal?" She said, "You just answered a lot of questions." I said, "Okay, well, what kind of questions?" She said, "Well, we lived in Albuquerque, and it was a really, really nice place." And she said, "But if we went outside and came back in without locking our car doors, we'd get on to each other about it." And I said, "No, I mean, you're teasing a little, aren't you?" And she said, "No, no, we do not leave. We would not leave our cars unlocked for more than 5 minutes without going, oh Lord, I didn't lock my car." And I told her, I said, "Well, my next door neighbor called me the other day, and I said, my car's in the driveway and I left the door open because I got out in a hurry and forgot to even shut the door for the last 3 hours."
Mhm.
So they noted that as nice as Albuquerque was, that they
didn't feel safe.
you took my words.
They didn't, and that's a very common statement of clients, is that we want the safety and the security. I mean, there's so many reasons to move here, but that's a big one. People want to feel safe. I had people moving during the pandemic because they were just concerned about, personal safety, riots, protest and things like that. But they just want to escape the noise and they want safety.
Okay, so John Paul discussed this on one of the shows we had with him. He said every time there was a riot, it seemed like the phones rang more the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
But how did people find us, Pat? I mean, we've been
Your
here the whole
podcast. Your podcast is a big part of that. Referrals. I have lots and lots of people who have said, I was referred by a friend or a family member. I came and visited. It's a combination of things. We can't do enough. I mean, we got to do more marketing.
Yeah.
But when people come here, they go, "How come I didn't know about this place?"
Yeah.
And we get them to come. We help them discover what we're all about. And the majority of people like what they see. And there are a few that don't. And I go, "This may not be the place for you." Some feel that it's a little bit too isolated, and so they're not a fit for this place. But for those that want to be here, they love it and they don't want to leave. I mean, why would you not love this?
Well, as a lady I met who had just come in the last month or so, she said, "What's not to love? What's not to love?" Well, and let me ask the people that aren't a good fit, and I don't say that anything other than how I said it. Are they hustle and bustle people? They miss the busy noise and the whatever, or they just
they do. They want to be able to go. They want
sushi at 3 a.m.
They want a restaurant on every corner. They want a drugstore, walk, right within their distance. They might not want to drive. Maybe they can't drive. Maybe you can't in the village because we are so large, 23,000 and some odd acres. You can't get everywhere in a golf cart.
Yeah.
And so if you're in that situation where maybe, again, it could be medical condition or a personal preference, the village is not for you if that's what your expectations are.
How does this compare? Do you have people, and I'm just curious because I know this crosstalks, and Randy's mentioned this before. A lot of people that I've talked to, some people I've talked to confuse the village, Hot Springs Village, with the villages in South Florida. Do you get that?
Well, yes. And I'll tell you what I did about that. My husband, George, we were down in Florida and I said, everybody keeps asking me if how we compare to the villages because they are confused. I said, I need you to, while we're here in Florida, I need to go look at it. So we detoured 4 hours each way and went over to check it out. And I would say to you, it's so different from us. So if you love the villages and you love having a dance on every square every night, and you like driving your golf cart to each event or restaurant or store, if you like that, you're probably not going to like us. If you like us, you're probably not going to like that. Now, I'm sure there's some crossovers in there, but it's just a very different place. It's not to say one's better than the other. It's just for different needs. It's what your expectations are.
And this is just my spin. Having never been there, seen a lot of video of it. Jeff Atkins, a buddy of mine, went by and took some video, and he was like, "Man, they are golf cart crazy here. Everything is golf cart accessible. The city centers, the da-da-da-da-da." And the nosy question that I couldn't help but ask was, and this is a country term, they look kind of cheek to jowl to me. I mean, there wasn't much green space or much vacant area.
No, you don't have, you know how all our homes are separated out? We have a minimum of 15 feet of separation from each other. Plus we
Sure.
have an awful lot of vacant lots. That is not what this is. It is smaller lots, congested, but that's okay if that's what you want. If you want to have a lot of energy and activities around you and hustle and bustle, that described it for me. It's we're more rural, we're more we're quieter, but yet we have all these amenities that you can take advantage of. Again, it just depends on what people are looking for, and that's my job. And I go back to my career with the phone company. My job is to help understand what clients are looking for, is truly listen to what it is they're wanting, obviously to answer their questions about who we are and what we are, but to really to help them discover their needs. And once I figure out what those needs are and wants are, I help them discover the village. And I call it solution selling, and it truly is helping to see if we're a fit, if our product is a fit for their needs. And it's sometimes people don't know, they just don't know, and so you have to help them with that discovery process.
I was talking to your broker, Clara Nicolosi, the other day, and I said, what are some of your challenges? And she was immediately, she was at education. And I said, what do you mean? She said, the village is so different. We have to educate people. No, that's private. No, this is this way. No, this is a rule. No, that's a law. This is a policy. This is this is the assessment. This is how we pay. This is blah, blah, blah. And I thought and frankly, I hope that's what Inside Out does. I hope we help educate people, because it is so very different. It's nearly indescribably different from the villages, if you know my point.
Well, it is, but you have to be careful that when you explain all that to a client, that number one, you don't scare them away or intimidate them. You give it to them in doses, but that's where you need to know what it is they're looking for. And then help fill in those blanks, because if you just do a blanket, this is it, they can get overwhelmed. And so you take it slow and thoughtful, and just help them figure out if this is the place for them, and you're patient.
And maybe that's why I'm not a realtor, because I don't think I'd do that very well. Let me blast you with a water hose. Here you go.
Well, and it's not, I mean, I've had clients, Dennis, that it took them 8 years to make a decision to move here. It's not an overnight thing. It's not like a Little Rock market where you have a lot of people moving in and out and it's tied to the school schedule. It is, I did a course one time, and it said the average person visited 27 different places in their lifetime before deciding where to retire.
Are you serious?
And so it is rare. It is rare for anybody to come into the village and buy on their first trip. In fact, I discourage it, because you want them to come and understand what it is, and then come back. If they're intrigued enough by it, then invite them back to do a home search.
Let's go down the path here just for a moment. And I know some people are interested. By the way, if people would like to contact Pat Bollier, they could contact you how, Pat?
501-425-0134. I answer my phone pretty much all the time.
I heard 501-425-1234. Is that what
I'm sorry, 0134.
0134.
My bad.
Well, and the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people are doing the discovery packages. Tell us what that is.
Well, the discovery package is a program that was put together by the Property Owners Association, and it allows a couple to come in, and with a discounted package rate, they can stay a couple of nights. They can play golf, they can play tennis, they could go play pickleball, and they have a choice of accommodations. It's a great way, affordable way to come in and visit the village. And as if you were a member. As if you were a member. And you can also, not only do they have lodging, Discovery Center Lodge or Discovery Package lodging, They have an RV discovery package. I have a client coming in this weekend who's bringing this RV. He's going to stay at our RV park. So he gets a reduced rate to stay there for a couple of days. He can extend at a discounted rate. And he will be visiting with me while we tour properties. But so it's a great program. Encourage people to take advantage of it and meet one of the local realtors who can tell you more about the village.
I strongly discourage people from taking just the discovery package because 2 days just does not do it. I wouldn't use 3 or 4 days to 5 is my suggestion, even to get a first dose, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yes, because there's too much to take in. So that's why, being able to extend that stay. But if you can get them here, just even for a couple of nights, and whether they stay at the Discovery Center or package or take advantage of other hosts that are here in the village, there's lots and lots of lodging, as you know, and they just need to come and they need to experience it and see if it's a place for them. But they need to have a tour guide. They just can't come in here and drive around because it's hard to figure out. It's a big place. And most realtors, I know, I don't pressure people. I want to educate people. And then if the place will sell itself, I will find them a home if they decide this is the right place. But they need to understand what we have to offer.
I think that's extremely well put. And it's one of those scenarios where if you push, it can seem so used car salesman, if you know what I mean. And that's not, that couldn't be anything further from the truth. Used car salespeople do that because they don't have any option. We have about 30,000 options behind us.
Right. I don't consider myself pushy, and I just want people to figure it. I want to help them figure out if this is right for them.
Wow. I tell you what, Pat, would you do this again, dear?
Sure.
We would love to have you back. I say me. I know Randy would. You're one of his favorites, and I know he hates it that he couldn't be here today.
I'm sorry he's under the weather. I hope he gets to feeling better.
Oh, we're gonna have to send him a shot of something to get him perked up and put him back on the pedestal. Get his little mouth working again.
Send him a picture of my queen costume.
I like that. I think I'll do that. I'll tell him we interjected that in the show. Well, thanks, Pat Bollier. It's Dennis Simpson for Hot Springs Village Inside Out, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Please subscribe to the podcast. You can do that by visiting our website, hsvinsideout.com, and tell a friend.